the recording? Okay, yes. Okay, so a very warm welcome to everyone. Last time we had discussed about the AILP Center. So this colloquium series is one of the initiatives of the AILP Center. So we will be having this bi-monthly, regular on some regular interval. We will be having these colloquiums. So today is one such colloquium. And for those who are joining for the first time, let me brief a little bit about the AILP Center. That this is actually an initiative by some of the faculty members of DIICT, because a lot of us are working in these areas of artificial intelligence and language processing. So the objective of this group is to have collaboration, research collaboration among the faculty members within DIICT as well as outside DIICT. And so we will also be offering a seminar series and summer schools and winter schools from time to time. So that's the long-term objective. So as part of today's colloquium, we've requested Professor Avik Hatti to speak. So I'll just give a quick brief introduction about him. So he is an assistant professor at DIICT, and he has completed his PhD from IIT Bombay, and his thesis was on image co-segmentation. And after that, he has worked in Istituto Italiano di Tecnologia. This is an institute in Genova, Italy. So he has done his postdoctoral research fellowship in that institute. So can I request Professor Avik, and can I request all of you to please welcome him? Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Shruti. Hello and good evening to all. I will now share the screen. Is my screen visible?
Yes, Avik, yes. Please go ahead.
Yes.
Yes. Today's topic of presentation is weakly supervised geodesic segmentation of mummy CT scans. So to summarize the title, we have CT scan images of a mummy and we want to perform segmentation on it. For that, we'll use weakly supervised method and we'll use geodesic measures. So in this talk, I'll explain all these things. So this is the outline of the talk. Before going into the details of the problem, I'll first explain the mummy data, and then we'll go to the problem and the goal and the challenges associated with it. And then I'll explain the method, which has two components, geodesic distance and graph cut technique. And I will also additionally explain one possible alternate approach. And then after the results, I will also touch upon a couple of problems on visual saliency detection and co-segmentation, and I'll show how geodesic distance can be incorporated on those problems. But I will not go into the details of those two problems. I will just give you some intuition. So now I can start the presentation. So this is the image or snapshot of the mummy, and this mummy is taken from the Egyptian Museum at Turin. So as you can see that the mummy is covered using some bandage of some material. So here also you can see the same mummy from a different viewpoint. And another thing to note here is that the mummy is lying on some supporting structure. So when we perform CT scan of this mummy, so in that CT images that we have, in addition to the bandaged mummy, we also see this supporting frame. So that will also come into the CT data. And we'll see that that also creates some additional challenges, but we'll see them later. So this is the mummy that we should see at the beginning. And now I'll show you the mummy data. So the CT scan data is an M cross N cross H volume. And here I am showing a slice viewed from the front of the mummy. And here I am showing another slice from the side view, from the left side view of the mummy. And as you can see that here we see from the mummy from head to leg, but only some portion inside the body. And these views are called the coronal view and the sagittal view. And then there is another view which is called the axial view. So here what we see is the cross section of the mummy as viewed from the bottom. So if you see from the leg towards the head, so you will see these particular slices. So here when I see that when I say that the mummy CT scan volume is M cross N cross H, that means this is an M cross N image, and like that we have H such slices from leg to head. So for example, this particular slice that we see, that is around somewhere here, which is just below the knee region. And then we can see another such example, which is around the waist region of the mummy. So here one important thing to notice is that you see here we have some bright pixels over here. So that is because of some jewelries that the person was wearing while the mummy was created. So that's why we are seeing some bright values. So those are from the reflections of the from the metals. So the metals are here the jewels worn by the person. Now here I have shown only 2 such slices of the mummy. If you want to see all the 8 such slices, here I'm showing. So as we see the feet, we can see, and then here we have the leg. And then as we move up, we'll see now we are going towards the middle of the body. Now we see somewhere the waist region, and then we are seeing the body where the chest region is there. So these 2 are the hands that we have. And if we move further, we'll go close to the throat, and now we have reached the skull of the mummy. So in that way, we could see from leg to the head of the mummy. So all the slices we have visualized. So now that we have visualized the entire volume that we have, the volume of the CT data we have, now let's analyze this particular each of the axial frames one by one. So this is one particular axial frame taken from the knee region. And here as we see that here we have the bandage region. So all these pixels that you see, these are belonging to the bandage. And here this is the supporting frame that I had talked about earlier. So in addition to that, we have more regions. For example, this particular segment and this particular segment, these 2 particular segments belong to the skin and bone. So that is the body of the mummy. And then we also see some hollow space over here. So why this hollow space came up? Because this mummy is there for many years, and over the years the body decayed. So the skin and everything shrunk. So because of that shrinking, there is this hollow space, empty space has been introduced. So this is another part of the data that we have. And then the final part is the exterior space. So this is the empty space outside the mummy when the mummy is CT scanned in the CT scan tube. So now that we know all these different particular semantic regions in this particular image, we can have some mention about the different pixel values that we see here. So these pixel values represent the attenuation during the CT scanning. So higher value implies higher attenuation. So as you see, the bandage region has very high value, and this air region has empty region, which is nothing but air. So that has very smaller value. Typically, this value of air is around -1000 Hounsfield unit. And the value for bones and metals, those are higher as you move on. And one more important thing to note, that the original CT scan data is not like this. So there the contrast was not that good. So for that reason, I have enhanced the contrast and showing you the output so that all these regions can be better separated and visualized better. So when you see this particular data, as I said, that we have this external space, which is the air. So that is useless to us. So what is useful is only the encircled region. So this is the body and this is the supporting frame that we have. So this is the same output I'm showing again by removing the outside air region. So this is the mummy that we had, and here I'm showing it from all the views. So this is the mummy and the supporting structure that we have. So now that we see this particular mummy, entire mummy, bandaged mummy, now if we consider only this particular highlighted part. So as I mentioned earlier, that this particular highlighted part, which is shown in pink here, belongs to the mummy body. And what is outside here, this region, so this is the bandage that we had. So if somehow we can segment the image, and if we can separate that pink region from every slice, and then we can stack them up, so finally if we visualize, what we'll see, only the body region of the mummy. So that is the goal of our problem. And here, as you see, obviously this body region is hidden behind the bandage that we had. So to summarize the goal, given the CT data, we need to segment it into different semantic regions and visualize each semantic region. For example, this one semantic region can be said, can be the body, and then there can be the outside structure that we had, and these are the jewelries that the mummy was wearing. So these are also inside the bandage. So this is the goal that we want to achieve given the original CT scan data, all the axial frames that we had been given in the CT scan data. So now let's come to the challenges. So challenges are related to the data that we have. So as I have already said, that these are contrast enhanced data that I am showing, and here what you can notice that there are the values of the pixel values of the bandage region, and some of the pixel values in the body region, they are same, they are in the same range. So there is this overlapping voxel intensity ranges in bandage and mummy body. So what we see there is that if you look at this particular highlighted pixels in the red, so they belong to the bandage, and the enclosed region in these green windows, so they belong to the body. So what we see here is that this particular region, if we see over here, you will see that they have the same gray value and they are connected, they are neighbor to each other. So that is one challenge. And then what you also see is that the supporting frame. So this example I had shown in the previous slide, where you see that these two rectangular patches are the supporting frames. Now what you will see that sometimes these two rectangular patches, they are connected by one component. So here we have only one connected component. So this creates another issue while detecting this particular region. And we will also see another issue that we will have sometimes is that here this patch that we have, that is also neighboring to the, that is also touching the bandage. So and also you see that the pixel values are also similar. So this also creates one problem. So before going into the next slide, can you please confirm, can you all hear me and see the slide changes?
Yes, Abhi, please go ahead.
Okay.
You can see everything.
Okay.
So far it is quite interesting and good.
Yes. So this is the second challenge that I have talked about. Now the third challenge that you can see over here is that I mentioned that the mummy was also wearing some jewelries. So because of that, after CT scan, so there will be some scattering. So in the scattering, as you can see, that in some pixel values have gone high, some pixel values have gone down. So this is another issue. So here I'm showing two examples. One is around the waist region, one is around the throat region. So here, so this is another challenge that we have to address. So now we have this challenge in mind. So here is the flow of the algorithm. So we'll go with a sequential approach. So where, as I've said, that we already have explained different semantic regions present. So first we'll try to separate one region at a time. So for example, we can separate the outside region, and then we can get the inside region, which is highlighted here in yellow color, and then we can start work on only that particular region and remove the supporting structure. And again, similarly, we can work on the remaining regions, and then we can separate. So one by one, we'll get one semantic region as the output. And for the solution, we have used weakly supervised approach. And during this, in this approach, as I've said, we have several axial frames, and that constitute the entire volume. So some of the steps will be performed on each frame independently, and some of the steps will be performed by considering the entire volume together. So I'll mention which step is volume level processing and frame level processing. The first stage is, of course, frame level processing. So this is the first stage where we want to segment the exterior regions, and for that, segmenting these external supporting structures, we can use template matching. But as I said, that this is a weakly supervised approach, so we'll have some prior information about the size of these structures, and based on that, we can find overlapping scores, and based on the overlapping scores, we can find out high overlapping scores, we can find out these particular structures. Now, another challenge that I had mentioned was that sometimes the structure will be like this, one connected component. So in that case, the template matching alone will not work. So what we can do is that we can use half lines, which are which can be used to fit vertical lines along the vertical edges of the structure. So once we get these half lines, it will be easier for us to generalize the entire approach, where we can detect this kind of disconnected frames and also this kind of connected supporting structures. And we'll also need some connected component analysis for extracting this. And as I also said that earlier, that this outside region is air, and also we know that air has some very low value, close to 1000 Hounsfield unit. So using that and using some morphological operation, we can easily separate the outside region. So that's why I am not going into the details. So what we can say that in addition, as I said, that one more challenge was the scattering. And in scattering, I said that there will be some pixel values which go up and some pixel values which go down. So ideally, these pixel values should be same as the air, but it has gone down. But since we have knowledge about the air value, so we can use morphological operations again, and we can do some correction to the data that we had. But we cannot do correction for the large values that we have. So that remains still a challenge. Now, after that first stage, from the original data, we could separate the output structures, and this is the output. This is the segment that we have separated out, and this segment is nothing but the bandaged mummy that we had. So this is the additional work that we had to do. So whatever we removed, that is outside, separate from the mummy. So this is the mummy, and here I have just shown them in some colors, because the data that we have, that is a grayscale data, but I am just for better visualization, I am using some colors to show the different regions. So now that we have this particular region, what is next? Next is to find the body region, because this, whatever we have now, this contains the body region as well as the bandage region and some interior hollow space. So from that, we have to separate the body region. So to solve this, let's look at the data again. This we have seen earlier. Now let's look at the data again, and we'll observe some important characteristics. If we start from here and move along this path and notice the pixel value profile, we'll see that at this particular location, there is a sharp change. Again, there in this particular location, there will be a sharp change of the pixel values. It will go up and go down. So if we see from any direction, if we move from outside, from the image edges towards the center of the image, we'll see that this particular structure is there. And this particular structure helps us to use this geodesic distance measure in our method. So what geodesic distance is, that I will explain in the next slides. But this is the intuition for using geodesic distance. And one more important thing to note is that this kind of favorable structure may not be available in all the slices. For example, if you consider this slice, that kind of structure is not present, because here you see that this body region is touching the bandage. So this creates another challenge. So for solving that, we need to include additional modules that I will explain towards the end of the session. So now that we have decided that we are going to use this geodesic distance, let's see what it is. Now, to explain geodesic distance, we have to talk about graph representation. Now, you know that any graph consists of some nodes and edges, and each node will contain some label or some attribute, and these edges are typically represented by the corresponding node pairs, similarity or dissimilarity based on the problem that we are trying to solve. So if we consider images and we want to represent each image as a graph, what we can do is we can consider a pixel. We can consider all the pixel like this, and also instead of using pixels, we can use some patches. And then we using either pixels or patches, what we can do is that we can represent these pixels or patches as the node in the image, and then we can connect the neighboring pixels or patches as an edge. So the graph, it will look like this. So if we consider pixels and if we consider 8 connected neighborhood, then this will look like the graph. So each node will be connected to its 8 neighbors using the edges. Now, instead of using patches or pixels, what we can also do alternatively is over segment the images and compute small segments. For example, we can use superpixels, and we can use the superpixels as nodes in the graph. And then we can what we can do, each node here in the image, they correspond to the nodes in the graph, and then the corresponding neighboring superpixels can be connected by an edge. And in this case, what you see that we do not have that regular structure that we had in the pixel based graph representation, but this is also useful sometimes if we want to follow the boundaries of the objects. So instead of using patches or pixels, it is sometimes better to use superpixels. Now, one important thing that you will notice here is that this this graph is not a complete graph. So here, for every node, it is not connected to all the nodes in the graph. So it is connected only to the neighboring nodes based on the spatial location in the particular image. So this is called a region adjacency graph. Also, another point is that graphs in general can be directed graph or undirected graph. But here we are, since we are using images, we are only considering the undirected graphs. For example, so that means every node can interact with any other node. So now that we have this graph representation of the images, so in our method also, whatever the axial frames, each image, that city image that we have, we are going to represent them as this kind of graphs. Now, to explain this, I'll explain with this simpler toy graph for simplicity. Let's say we have this graph and we have two nodes P and Q, and we want to compute the distance between these two. So we can use any standard metric. For example, we can use Euclidean distance. But what we want to do is define a new distance measure. So here what we want to do is to compute the distance between P and Q, we want to traverse from P to Q using different paths. For example, in this particular graph, we have two paths. One is this red path, another is this blue path. And we can add up all the edge weights along each of the paths. So along the blue path, the cumulative weight is the is dp1 plus dp1q, and this is the cumulative weight along the cumulative distance along the red path. And then finally we'll pick the minimum distance among these two. So in general, what we can have, before going into that, so one more important thing to note here, that we have these arrows, they denote the path, but please don't confuse this with a directed graph, because this graph is still undirected graph. And this arrow is just shown that showing that we are traversing through this path. And here, to clarify this particular distance measure is same if we go from P to Q or if we go from Q to P. So this is an undirected graph, and this is the distance measure that we have defined. And this distance measure is called the geodesic distance measure. This geo comes from like space information that from that intuition, and we are traversing through that, so that's why this is called this geodesic distance. And here for this particular graph I am showing two paths, but in general there will be many more paths. So this is the general definition, where if we want to compute the geodesic distance between two particular nodes, we want to reach from P to Q along all possible paths, and the cumulative weight along the mean path will be the geodesic distance. So that is the definition of geodesic distance. So this is one example based on images. So this is, I was explaining using this toy graph. Now if we see some real image, and I have shown this image earlier also, and we had shown the graph. So if we want to compute the geodesic distance between this particular node, these two particular node pair, what you can do is that you can traverse through this path and compute the cumulative distance, or you can traverse through this path and find the cumulative distance. Like that, you can traverse through all the paths and finally find the cumulative distance, all the cumulative distances, and then finally compute the minimum distance. So that will be the geodesic distance. So this is just representation in the image domain. Now we'll see that why we go to the geodesic distance, because when we wanted to compute distance between 2 points, just the simple Euclidean distance or any other distance metric between those two particular points would have been sufficient. But why do we go for this geodesic distance? So here, if you see this particular example, we have this point P, which is present here on the external region, and then there is this point Q1, and then there is the point Q2. So this Q2 is on the body region, and this Q1 is on the bandage region. And if you see that the voxel values over here at Q1 and Q2, they are quite similar. And if you compute simple distance, any distance metric, what will happen that these two distance values will be almost same. But that is what we do not want, because we want to distinguish between this body region and this bandage region. But using this distance, we cannot. But if you use this geodesic distance, you will be able to easily distinguish. Because here I am showing one synthetic image, which is a representation of this entire data that we have. Is you see that we have this node over here in the exterior space, and if we move along this path through the wrap region to the body region, the geodesic distance will increase like this. And you will always see this sharp jump over here. And if you compute the geodesic distance over here, you will see that what you see here, this geodesic distance between P and Q1 is less than geodesic distance between P and Q2. So these distances are not same, and this will help us to distinguish the different body region and the bandage region. And we can see the distance values now. If you see here, outside region is completely dark because we are not computing any geodesic distance over there. So we are computing geodesic distance for pixels only inside this body region and the bandage region. And as you see that as you go from outside, from image edge towards the image center, the geodesic distance goes up, and you see that there is this high geodesic distance for the body region, and this is also visible from this particular curve that you have. And since there is a sharp jump over here, so it is very easy to find a threshold. So you do not need to do any tuning. It is very easy to find the threshold, to get the threshold and separate these nodes. So what you can do using the threshold, you have this original image, and based on the distance, you could separate it into two segments. So this first segment that we have is consists of only the bandage pixels, and the second segment that you have is mainly consists of the body segment, but in addition there are still some bandage pixels are also present, and that is there because we have not used any particular knowledge. We had used the threshold from the distances. And also one more reason is that if you see the data here, over here, the body region is touching the bandage region, and there is no such change in the value of the pixels. So that also creates challenges. So what we see, we are now have is these two outputs. So this separation we have achieved to up to certain level of accuracy. Now what we will do in the next step is to separate these additional bandage pixels that we have here from the body segments, so that we can finally get only the body pixels and get a better result. And for that, we are going to use the grab cut technique. So this grab cut technique is an existing tool, which is an interactive segmentation method. So here, the idea is that if an image is given an input, you have to segment the foreground object. And for that, since this is an interactive method, so first the user needs to draw a bounding box around the object, so that the object of interest is completely enclosed inside the bounding box. And then it will go through some iterations, and in each iteration also user will additionally draw some more scribbles to refine the result. And after all the iterations, so we'll get the foreground object segmented from the original input image. Now I'll just use this one slide to briefly explain the method in GrabCut. So what they do, let's say we have n pixels in the image. So these are the pixel values, and the pixel opacity values are what we want to compute finally. So this is the unknown alpha, and alpha value is typically a real value from 0 to 1. 0 means corresponds to the background, 1 corresponds to the foreground. Ideally this should be binary, but since we are going to compute it using some optimization method, it will be a real valued measure. And to find this alpha, we need to minimize this energy function, and this energy function has two terms. One is a data term, another is the smoothness term. So let's see what these terms are. First, if we see the smoothness term, if we see this particular exponential term, here you see this is a similarity value, because exponential negative will make the distance, convert the distance to a similarity value. And this is an indicator function. So what happens is that if this Zn and Zm, they are the pixel attributes, and if they are close to each other, that means the pixels are highly similar, then the similarity value will go up. And we want to make the label to be same. So if alpha n equal to alpha m, in that case, this indicator function will return 0. So we'll be able to minimize the energy. Similarly, if you consider the data term, here we want to fit each pixel to the existing foreground and background model. So here H represents the histogram, and typically these histograms of labeled pixels, one for the foreground histogram, another will be the background histogram. They are typically represented using Gaussian mixture models, and you want to find how better this particular pixel fits in a histogram. So if it fits well, then this value will go up. But since we are minimizing this energy function, that's why the negative term is there. And using this iterative method, in each iteration, what we can do is compute new GMM parameters, and the labels are updated. And this minimization is done using the minimum cut algorithm of Boykov and Jolly. So this was the some explanation of the method of GrabCut. Now let's see how we can use GrabCut in our method. So in their method, what they did, initially they started with a user drawn bounding box, but we do not need any bounding box, because if you remember at the output of the geodesic distance measure, I have shown that we have obtained this segmentation. So we could separate these two. Now these pixels here, this one, we can consider them as background. Let's treat these pixels as background, because these pixels are from the bandage, and these pixels can be considered as the unlabeled region. So what we are getting is the automatic selection of labeled voxels. So we are not using bounding box, we are getting the labeled voxels automatically here. So here we can reduce the user interaction. So that is one advantage of this method. And then another important thing to note, that here we are working on volumes. So the previous geodesic based approach, that stage was performed on each slice independently. Here we can consider a set of successive frames and create many small overlapping volumes, and then we can perform the GrabCut algorithm on that small volumes. So here is an example. Let's say we have considered 10 such successive slices and constructed a volume, and we are performing GrabCut on that particular volume. And these are the unlabeled pixels that we have shown. So again, if I go back to the previous slide, so this is the labeled pixels and this is the unlabeled pixels. And here our goal is to remove these bandage pixels. So here these are the unlabeled pixels. So after one round of GrabCut, what we see that number of unlabeled pixels have gone down. So those pixels, those are removed, they have been assigned to the background class right now. So we are left with this refined output. Now what we can do, if needed, we can use some small user interaction, and based on this label we can again apply GrabCut, and again we can refine the result better. So this was one user interaction that we can use. So as I said, our method was weakly supervised approach. So this is one weak supervision that we can use here. Now here I will explain one alternate approach to the GrabCut method. So this method is based on ranking. So we are doing the same, we want to achieve the same goal, where we want to label some of the points from this unlabeled region as the foreground. In our case, the foreground is the body section. So what we said, that what we can assume is that the labeled points, let's define them as set 1, and the unlabeled points, let's denote them as set 2. So we want to rank the elements from set 2 with respect to the elements of the set 1 based on some similarity measure. So if we want to rank, and then the top ranked elements from set 2 are added to set 1. So if we see that set 2 consists of background and foreground, and then the top ranked points, elements of this set 2 will certainly be the background points which are present over here. So after ranking, the remaining points in the set 2 will constitute the foreground. And so here what we are trying to do is binary labeling from label of only one class, because we have label of only the background class. So in this slide, I'll quickly go through the steps of this algorithm. Let's say we had n such data points in set 1 and set 2 together, and initially there can be a binary vector that can be used to set the values for the unlabeled points and the labeled points. And finally, what we want to compute is the ranking score, and this ranking score F will give us the final labels that we want to compute. And for that, we want to minimize a cost function, And then this cost function here, we see that there are two terms. So the first term is the data term, which is similar to what I showed in the graph cut based method. And then here we have the smoothness term, where which can be represented using, if we expand it, we get this. So here basically what we are trying to see is that Sij is the similarity between ith and jth pixel, and f is basically the label. So if there is a high similarity, the labels should be equal, and in that case labels will be equal means this term will go down to 0. So in that case we will be able to minimize this cost function. Now there are two more additional terms to this particular cost function. So here what we want to do is project these original feature vectors that we have. They can be some d-dimension feature vector that can be projected to a scalar, and scalar is the value of this ranking scores. So here that projection is going on, and here we are trying to minimize the error between the projection and the final ranking score that we are going to compute. So using this ranking based method, we can label the unlabeled pixels that we had. So now what we have achieved is that initially using the geodesic segmentation, we had separated with up to some accuracy the bandage pixels and the body pixel. And using this graph cut technique, we have improved the result by removing some of the bandage pixels from the set 2 that we had. Now we'll have the final correction stage where to refine the result. So this is an probably some optional stage. It can be used to refine the result. So here what you can see that there are many segments which are the correct body segments. For example, here you have this blue, yellow, green, all these segments are the correct body segments. But if you see the segment S1 and S2 marked in red, let's assume that they are not part of the body. So we can do a tracking based approach to track all the valid segments over all the successive frames. And here we can see that this is a particular track. Let's say we have the ith track, and it contains all the segments belonging to the track over some past few, let's say m number of frames. And then when we go to the k+1th frame, we'll have many such segments present, and we'll choose the segment which gives the highest score, and that segment with the highest score will be appended to the track. In that way the track will grow, and a track will cease to exist if none of the segments in the k+1th frame have a high score that we have. So using this tracking method, we can discard further some of the segments here marked in red, so which are not part of the body. So after doing all these stages, we have finally obtained the result. So this is the same result I am showing from different viewpoints and after using different zooming. So this is the mummy body that we had, and this was hidden behind the bandage that we had. And again here I am just zooming to the skull region and showing how the skull looks from different viewpoints. So here you see that there are different colors, but again I am for better visualization I am showing you in different colors, but these are all grayscale values. But obviously there will be, the skull region will have larger gray value, and this region may have little smaller gray value. And then another point that we said initially, that there are jewels, and to detect the jewel we do not need any sophisticated algorithm. So it can be simply done by thresholding and connected component analysis, because we know the radio density values of these metals are typically are very high. So using thresholding technique, we can get the jewels. Again, I am just showing them in golden color to better visualize this. And this is the same output visualized from different viewpoints. So these are all the jewels those are the person was wearing when the mummy was created. So this is the complete result that we have. So this is the original mummy that we had taken CT scans. And so these are the different components that we can see that it has been digitally unwrapped, we can say. Instead of physically unwrapping the mummy, we have digitally unwrapped the mummy, and we want to see what is inside that. So this is the bandage that I'm showing partially over here. So now that we have seen one method to get this mummy segmentation, what I'll show now is that application of geodesic distance in some other applications. So first application is visual saliency detection. So what is visual saliency? So if we see these 4 images, in each image there is one object of attention. For example, in this image there is the butterfly, then we have the flower, and in these 2 images, in the bottom 2 images, we have this green apple and the red apple respectively. So that is because these are the objects that capture our attention in the particular images. So we want to detect this salient objects. We call these highly attentive objects as salient objects. We want to detect that, but for that we need a numerical measure for the saliency value of each pixel. For example, here I am showing 2 example images. So in the first image, we have this particular bear is the salient object because it is quite distinct from the background. As you can see, the pixel values in that belonging to that bear have high saliency measure, and the background pixel values have pretty low saliency value. Similarly, we have this particular cloth of this person is having pretty high saliency value because this red color over here captures our attention more here. Now, to compute this saliency measure in an unsupervised setup, there have been some attempts, and for that there are some assumptions needed. One such assumption is that the object of attention is not predominantly at the image boundary. This is because there is an assumption that when someone try to capture some scene, some object, generally we try to capture that object keeping at the center of the image. So using that, because of that habit that we have, this assumption is made where the object of attention is not predominantly at the image boundary. So we can assume that the boundary pixels can be background. So that is one assumption. And for that, using this information, we can compute a background probability measure for each pixel or patch or superpixel, whatever you are trying to use for computing the saliency measure. So next we'll see how this background probability is computed. So let's consider this synthetic image, and here you see there are only 2 colors, green and white. So these green and white, they are not the pixel values, so they just represent that all those pixel values, all those green colored pixels, they have quite high feature similarity among themselves, and all the white pixels have high feature similarity among themselves. But if we see 2 pixels from different colors, they have low feature similarity. So this is the explanation of this particular image. And if we say that even this particular non-boundary pixel also has very high similarity with this boundary pixels, that means that it is the inverse of the distance. Of course, the similarity is the inverse of the distance. What we can say that this particular non-boundary pixel has very high background probability because it is similar to many of the boundary pixels. So this non-boundary pixel has very high background probability. And let's consider another example. If we consider this particular pixel, and uh, it is quite possible that this pixel belongs to the foreground object, but still it has some high similarity value with the boundary pixels. But if we use the previous method to compute background probability, what will happen that this background probability of this particular foreground pixel will be high, but that is what we do not want, because that is a foreground object pixel, and its background probability should not be high, its background probability should be small. So if we use the concept of geodesic distance, then the distance will be now computed by adding up all the distances along this path. So now this cumulative distance will be high. So we can say that the cumulative distance high, that means the similarity is low. And if the similarity with the boundary superpixels is low, that means its background probability is also low. So in that way, we can, if we use this geodesic distance over here, we will be able to compute the correct background probability, which will help us to compute the correct saliency value. So this is all about all about the use of geodesic distance in this visual saliency problem. I'm not going into the details of how saliency is computed. This was just the intuition that this background probability measure can be correctly computed using geodesic distance. Now, here is another problem of image co-segmentation. So the problem is that if we are given a set of images, together we want to find the common object present in all the images. Here you can see in this example, there are 8 such images, and out of them, in the 7 such images, we have this common object of this balloon, or whatever this object is, this balloon image. So after co-segmentation algorithm, we can find this common object present in all the 7 images. So this is the co-segmentation problem. But if we are given these 3 images for performing co-segmentation, now there comes a dilemma, because we see that the common object is the cow, so we will certainly detect this common object as cow, but you will also see some background. So in background we have some water body, and we have some field. So they are also background, but they are also common. So if we use the co-segmentation algorithm, we will not be able to just detect the cows as the co-segmentation output. So we'll also additionally by mistake detect the background, which is not the goal. So in this case, using the geodesic distance, like in the visual saliency application where we had computed the background probability, here also we can compute the background probability, and then we can say, okay, this water body and this field, they had a high background probability, so we are going to discard them in our algorithm, in our final result. So in that way, we can solve this problem of common background using this background probability. So these are the 2 applications that I wanted to show. Now I will conclude this talk with again, to summarizing the challenges that we had, was that the similarity between some bandage and body voxels created some problem when we wanted to separate using the geodesic distance. And we also had some problem with the scattering of data, which we could solve only for the lower values but not for the higher values. And then using geodesic distance, we could partially segment the bandage, but then to refine the result, we could get good segmentation result using the graph cut method and tracking method on top of the geodesic distance based output that we had. And in GrabCut, typically people need to provide so much of user interaction, but we do not need that much of interaction, because we are using the previous stage output in the GrabCut method. So that reduces the user interaction. And another thing is that the different modules that we have used for this mummy segmentation problem can be used into several other problems. For example, that grab cut I had said that is generally used for any interactive object segmentation method, and similarly the geodesic distance measure I have shown two applications where it can also be applied. Okay, thank you. And this work was done at during my postdoctoral research at IIT Genova. So thanks to the research group there as well. So if there is any questions, please ask.
I have one query, Avik.
Yes.
The grab cut method,
Yes.
see, it is a sequential method, right? So you use in succession the grab cut to get the exact body part from the separated from the bandage part. Is it, or it is a one pass method?
Grab cut is an one pass method, but in that method, to solve that method, there is an energy function that needs to be minimized, and that energy function is typically minimized in an iterated method, because
Right.
there are many parameters there in that cost function, and each parameter in the cost function is it is solved for one parameter in one iteration.
So is there any way as a user I can decide where to stop the iterative method?
Yes. So in each iteration, the cost function energy will minimize, and then we can try to fix a threshold that the change in the energy is less than this threshold, so we can stop there.
So you have said the grab cut and then the ranking method, right?
Yes.
So if I understand correctly, ranking method is a kind of thresholding also, right? Grab
Yes,
cut is also kind of a thresholding, and
Yes.
ranking is also kind of a thresholding.
Exactly.
So my query is that why some of the existing thresholding will not work. For example, say not very recently, but around 2010, 12, the RAP set based segmentation was thresholding was very popular at that time. So is it possible that we can think of that kind of a segmentation for bandage and the body part?
Yes, yes. So here, but one thing that I wanted to say that we are applying both this grab cut or the ranking method, assuming we have some labeled pixels. Here I am saying all these labeled pixels are certainly from the bandage, but here we have the unlabeled pixels which contains some of them are bandage, some of the body part. So now, assuming that we have this label, all these methods can be used to finally label all these unlabeled pixels into two classes. One is from this background, one is from the body.
So basically, if I understand correctly, you are one stage ahead of any thresholding kind of a segmentation.
Yes,
So you are
initially.
utilizing those information for grab cut and ranking.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.
We have a few questions on the chat box. One
Okay.
is Shantanu from NIT Suratkal. His question is the data set available on the internet? And is the ground truth of the segmented image also available?
So the data set is not available. So we had received the data set from the museum specifically for this particular project. So that is the first thing. And the second, regarding the ground truth, again, we do not have the ground truth, because for finding the ground truth, we need some experts to annotate, because we do not know everything inside the mummy, what everything is. So that's why the result that we have shown, so that is also we cannot evaluate numerically using some existing methods, for example, intersection over union. And that is another reason we could not go for fully supervised methods where we could have used some deep learning methods. But now we do not have the ground truth, so that's why we went for this weakly supervised method.
Okay.
Shruti, can you give me one more opportunity? I forgot to ask one thing. Actually, Avi,
Yes.
there's one interesting point came in my mind. You see, when you are segmenting the bandage and non-bandage area, not that bandage and this body part, because
Okay.
you are separating jewelry from the body part after that. So basically, your task is bandage versus non-bandage. Then from the non-bandage, body part and jewelry. Is it? Or I misunderstood?
No, actually, I did not provide that information. So the jewelry is segmented at the beginning, so that those very, because they typically have very high values, so we could separate them at the beginning, and we do not need to include them in the all these algorithms.
Okay. Sorry. Thank you for the clarification. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, I think we have one more question on the chat box. Professor Bhavesh Parmar. So he's asking, did you consider segmentation uncertainty in geodesic distance method?
Can you explain what do you mean by segmentation uncertainty?
If Professor Bhavesh Parmar is there, so I would request him to please ask the question by unmuting himself. Yeah, please.
Actually, you have given the answer in the earlier question only. I was thinking that you are having some ground truth. So basically, that question has been answered, and I'm just repeating it. That's all. Thank you for clarifying it in the earlier answer.
Okay.
Okay, we have another question here. How by Shantanu Roy? I think he's the same student, PhD student in NIT Surathkal. So, how to measure segmentation performance in this case if we don't have the ground truth?
No, we cannot. We have to just we will visually see that in that case.
Okay.
So one thing I want to say here is that when we say that we are using weakly supervision, so generally these things are of interest of people from the archaeological departments, and the method allows them to provide those scribbles or the user interaction. So based on that requirement, they can provide some interaction during the graph cut stage or the tracking stage, and in that way they can see the result whatever they need. They can understand better. So based on that, they will probably use the toolbox based on their requirement. Yes, so that's basically what it is.
Okay, so any other questions? Actually, I have one question, Professor Avik.
Yes.
So, in case of saliency computation, you said that the assumption is that the salient object should lie in the center. So, my question is that what happens if the salient object is at the image boundary instead of the center?
Yes. So if I So here I had said that the assumption was that the salient object is typically not at the boundary, and based on that assumption we had computed this background probability that we had. Now so it depends on how much of the object is lying on the background. So if you see, if you see this one example that you have, so here we see that one pixel, let's say all these pixels highlighted in green belong to the object, but you see that this one pixel is belonging to the boundary also from the object. So now what we have here is that the background probability of this boundary pixel, even though it belongs to the object, it will have very small small background probability, because it is connected to many similar non-boundary pixels. So in that way, there will not be much problem if very few pixels from the object are at the boundary. In this example, as you see that there are some pixels of the dog on the boundary. So these pixel saliency values near the boundary are small, but they are not very small. So it depends on what is the amount. If all the pixels are touching the boundary, then of course we cannot use this assumption.
Okay, okay. But typically it will be in the center only.
I mean, most of the pixels, it need not be at the center. So it can be anywhere in the image, but there should be very few pixels touching the boundary.
So it is away from the boundary. Most of the pixels are away from the boundary.
Yes, not touching the boundary. That's the only thing. Yes.
Right, right. Okay, thank you. Do we have any more questions from other participants? Okay, so I think thank you so much, Professor, for such a wonderful presentation, and really explained everything in detail and answered all the queries really well. Thank you so much. So
Thank you, Avik.
let us
Thank
all
you.
thank Professor Avik.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay then.
So we wrap up
Thank you
today's
so much,
meeting.
everyone. Yeah, so we conclude today's meeting. Thank you so much for participating, everyone. Thank you.
Okay. Very good. Very good. Thank you very much. So next round, we'll be waiting for the next round. Okay.
Sure, sure. Okay.